What's an illegal thing you used to do on a regular basis without knowing it was illegal to begin with? When I was a kid, I thought it was normal that we could buy movies the day after they came out from the Chinese lady in the chicken shop. I didn't realize it was a crime until middle school when I told someone my grandma had Avatar on DVD and they said that was impossible since the movie was still in theaters. Were they crappy videos taken off the screen while the movie was playing? No, Chinese lady was a real professional. She knew how to get a good video. Chinese lady's son was a projector mechanic. 100% this. If you want a good cam of a movie, you need to know someone who works in the cinema. Downloading music through YouTube to MP3. I'm from the Napster days. I did that knowing full well it was illegal, but I justified it by saying it was no different than making a mixtape. And in fairness, I found a lot of music that wasn't available in my area. Once I found a huge anthology of power metal because somehow Pandora got me hooked on Gamma Ray. This was before Dragon Force got onto Guitar Hero. I used to think the little olive kiosks in grocery stores were samples. I would always leave with a little produced bag of various olives and enjoy my treat on the ride home. I had odd tastes as a kid. Every other kid was out there stealing candy. I went for the coffee beans. I remember as a kid when the grocery stores had the variety of ground coffee beans. Maybe some still do. In the dispensers that you bought by weight. Used to love walking down that aisle and smell the different coffees. Smelled so good. I don't like coffee but loved the smell. Didn't expect this thread to hit so deep, lol. Not me, but a friend of mine accidentally stole coffee for an entire semester. We had a small cafe on campus that sold small meals you could take to class and drinks. They had their coffee area set up next to the counter, so you had to order and pay for it. Then they would give you a cup and you would go fill it up yourself. She thought it was free and would just go up to it a few times a day and fill up her reusable cup. She finally noticed after we ran into each other in line and she watched me order mine and pay for it. I had a friend who worked at a campus cafe. He got fired for eating a cookie during his shift without paying. Had a friend who liked to touch all the paintings in museums. She had been doing this her whole life. Thought it was totally normal, and had just happened never to get caught. She did not believe me when I told her that you aren't allowed to. We got kicked out of the museum. To those asking how we got kicked out, or rather, she got kicked out and I left with her. She walked down a row of paintings and dragged her hand across every one of them. And a pretty pissed off looking guard asked her to please leave. No dramatic scene or anything. Probably could have stayed if she'd explained that she really didn't know, but she was pretty embarrassed by the whole thing, so we just hustled out. Serious question. Can your friend read? And has she ever read a sign? Ever? That's for other people. Thing I actually heard once. I asked why exactly they were exempt and got a blank stare. Old job I had a snack bar in the conference room. It was always open and I thought you can just go and take a snack during break. It was odd how there was always a lot of food left, so I would take several sandwiches, snacks, and drinks before going home. Did this for months and always thought it was allowed and normal, until management made an announcement that the food in the conference room aren't for low-level employees but for meetings and managers and so on. Accounting department also declared that the food was a waste of money as the majority of it was thrown out by the end of the day. Food was still being taken because no one enforced the rules there. Also, taking leftover food from the food places. You can't eat that, we're going to throw it away. Know your place. Poor I remember back in the days of Napster and Lemua when everyone said I'd go to jail for downloading a Blink-182 album. In reality, I just gave my computer super AIDS. In reality, I just gave my computer super AIDS. Linking Park Numegs. Trespassing. As a kid, think 6, 7. My younger brother and I would go over into our neighbor's yard. He had a fantastic garden, and play quietly. He never said anything. He was a World War II vet and lived alone. I guess we amused him. When he died, a new family moved into the house. We continued our ventures into the yard and the family must have found out, because we walked over one day to be met with a locked fence. Our days of playtime were over. Edit. I got a lot of comments about his trauma, and to be honest I never really thought about my neighbor's backstory, so I asked my mom. Apparently he lived alone because he had disowned his son for being gay. and once his wife died he stopped coming around. When he was dying my dad and mom visited him because no one else was. He was delirious and thought my dad was his son and started apologizing and saying he should have been a better dad. The son in question never showed up to visit, but when he came to the neighborhood to look at the house, my dad told him what his father had said. He broke down sobbing. I guess we were like the grandchildren he never had. Either way, this whole story was more depressing than I thought, so I'm going to grab some tissues. Edit 2. A wholesome award. Just. Why? Edit 2.1. I meant this more as I don't think this is wholesome. I see it as sad. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. I once had this coworker that was always coming up with harebrained business schemes. One day he comes in and starts going on this rant about how he's going to become a millionaire. He explains that he recently purchased like 10,000 SD cards from China, and he got a card reader for them. They cost like 50 cents each or something. And he's all like, but they can hold up to 10 gigabytes of data each. That's enough for like 4 movies. And I can sell them for like $20 each. He goes on to talk about the incredible margins his new business is going to have, and how he just needs to earn back enough so he can afford to upgrade to a multi-card reader. Also, his big plan was to put this stuff on my MySpace and then mail the cards to people. At this point I'm feeling bad for the guy since he's obviously already dumped $ into this, but figured it's better for him to lose that than land himself in prison. So I'm like, dude, you realize that's illegal, right? You're going to get FBI coming after you for movie piracy. The look on his face, just like, completely defeated. Felt sorry for him, but seriously, $0.50 for a 10 GB SD card? I mean, storage media is becoming incredibly cheap these days, but I'm pretty sure you can still make your money back selling them. Make a decent profit even. If it was back in the days of MySpace, it sounds almost too good to be true even. This was like 10 years ago, LOLIDK what the actual figures were. He threw a couple grand into the idea though. Until I saw the sign posted as I exited Yellowstone National Park. I was unaware that it's illegal to make elk noises at the elk. I'd been riding around on my motorcycle making elk noises all week. They love it. They all look up and stare at you as you ride past. I hiked all over Yellowstone with my dog. Found out months later dogs aren't allowed in most places. Odd thing is I met up with a park ranger and she loved my dog. That's because of moose. They are extremely aggressive to dogs as wolves are kinda their natural enemy. I heard stories when I lived in Canada of folks out for a casual stroll being stalked or even attacked by moose because they had their dogs with them. Probably not illegal, but when I was younger my dad taught me how to trick the kiddie ride at my local Walmart so that I could continue riding without having to pay a quarter or whatever the fee was. You just gonna leave us hanging and not tell us how to trick the Walmart pony? From what I remember, he told me the latch that prevented people from using a string on a quarter was broken. Is your father Mr. Krabs? As a teen living in the US, Utah to be specific, and I was really questioning the sanitation of the utensils in the high school cafeteria. So I was carrying a multi-purpose tool with me that had a fork and a spoon on it. However, I wasn't aware that it had a fully functional blade on it. 3 and 3/4 inches to be precise. Oops. Edit. Okay. To answer a few questions that I frequently got, here's some more context. Through some recent researching via incognito mode, even though it is illegal in Utah to carry a straight-up knife to school, you are allowed to carry around a pocket knife as long as the blade is below 2.5 inches. But as my blade goes over that line, it's still technically illegal. And speaking of the length, I accidentally measured an extra inch for some weird reason. So it's closer to 2 and 3/4 inches, but it's still over the mark. Funny, in the 70s I went to school every day with 6-inch folding knife on my belt. I bought it just before I started high school. In 2002 or 2003 my public high school instituted a rule that knives could not be longer than 3.5 inches. Before that any size was allowed. My school had a rifle team too. I believe there were guns as well, though I wasn't involved. Maybe they were off-site. Delivered homemade wine for a friend's dad. He'd give me and a buddy a list of addresses, load down the car and send us on our way. We'd bring him the money. he'd give us both our own jug for the trouble. LOL, I had a teammate when I lived on the UP and his dad would gift us a case of his apple vodka for $20 and made sure to emphasize it was a gift. We've seen dirty bottles and jars for sale. You buy the bottle, but you'll have to empty and clean it before use. The Jack Daniel's distillery is in a dry county. You can't buy booze there. However, you can buy a commemorative bottle at the gift shop, and they will fill it for free. I flew with pepper spray in my backpack upwards of 15 times. I didn't think about it being potentially illegal, and SAR never caught it. I only stopped when I saw a sign that said no aerosols and I asked someone nearby in line if pepper spray was an aerosol. He was like, yeah, and definitely illegal. So I threw it in the trash. Makes me concerned that SAR never found it, and concerned that I'm really dumb. When I was 10 I took fireworks home with me in my carry-on bag which the SAR didn't notice. They did however confiscate my toothpaste out of that same bag. Priorities. Used to carry a switchblade around when I was 14 or so. That shit's blade was huge. Thankfully no one ever stopped me. After a year or so discovered in my country switchblades were illegal to carry. I make a lot of things out of wood and metal. I didn't know how aggressive railyards can be about their shit. A few times in my life I've found railroad spikes partially buried in pebbles up to 10 feet away from the track, and I've taken those to make knives and jewelry with. Turns out they do not like it when people take their rusted, busted junk that they leave to the elements. A lot of wrong answers to why this is the case. The real reason is that they don't want to encourage you pulling up rails and spikes to sell as scrap. You can't tell the difference between a spike that was pulled out of the ground and a discarded spike. That said, railway police are almost always giant dicks. A shockingly high number of people die along railroad rights of way, up to 1,000 per year in the US. If a train comes and you're in the way, the train simply cannot stop. Railroad police really just want people to stay clear of the tracks and enforce this strictly. Not me, but my cousin, who is now in his upper 20s. Thought up until a few years ago that the paper yard bags stacked outside of hardware stores were free. He would routinely grab a stack on the way out to his car. As a nurse in the States, if we have a multi-use medication, inhaler, medicated cream, insulin pen, etc., I would always give it to my patient when they were discharged. They already paid for it and they are one patient use. Apparently, as a nurse I'm only allowed to throw it away, even if they are leaving the hospital with a prescription for the same exact medication. I can't give it to them. I have to throw it away. It's outside my scope of practice to dispense a medication. Another reason your healthcare costs are so high in USA. Well, fuck that. In my eyes, you were doing the right thing. I used to set my Nintendo Switch location to Denver, Delaware where there is no sales tax until my mother told me that it's tax evasion. But there is sales tax in Denver. Source: I live here. Maybe he meant Delaware. No sales tax there. Use an R4 card in my Nintendo DS that my family gave to me full of games. I never knew that it was illegal as they bought it just like I would for any other DS game. I figured that they just got one heck of a good deal. Drive body parts across county lines. I taught anatomy labs at a community college and used to take the brains and other internal organs for my high school science students to see study. I did this for 5 years until the dean at the college pulled me into his office and asked why I had body parts on a cart, heading out of the building. I assured him I had been doing this each semester and that I would bring them back the next evening and students wouldn't miss them. He assured me that I wouldn't because apparently you need a license to transport cadaver materials to another county and that I was likely committing a felony. Oops. The first sentence had me worried. Wait, so would you be rolling out of school with like brain jars and slabs of human parts meat on a trolley or /underage drinking? In the country where my family is from, it's perfectly acceptable. Underage sex. My buddy got caught with the mayor's daughter. They were 14 months apart, and the law was 12, and the prosecutor wanted to put him on the sex offenders list. It was new, and we had no idea how much it would screw up his life. His dad got him a lawyer. In much of the West, Both of those things are pretty much tolerated even if they are illegal. Most prosecutors don't even bother with prosecuting statutory rape for normal teenage relationships, because most people think it's ridiculous now and public resources are better spent on cases where kids are actually harmed. She was 16. He was 17. But she was the mayor's daughter. Forging signatures when I was younger because my mom wouldn't sign something or didn't have the time. It looked exactly the same too. By younger I mean 8. Edit. I had a lot of fun reading this thread and I think you 1K first time. Fun fact, there's only one T that's just your brain. At least yours look the same. I used to forge my mom's signature in my own 10-year-old handwriting. The teacher never questioned it. As a teacher, it's usually not worth the time and effort to question it. If it comes back signed, it's safest to assume honesty until it's proven otherwise. Sometimes you have kids whose parents can't read or write themselves. One of my colleagues had a really awkward conversation with a mom who grew up in a very poor household, stopped attending school in the 2nd grade so she could help support her family, and as an adult could only sign her name with an X instead of a full signature. Bringing home kinda Überraschungseier. Kinda surprise eggs. From Germany for my son. Also receiving surprise eggs for my son as a gift from my cousin. As far as I know, they are still illegal in the US. I have multiple prescription medications I must take every day. I organize them in one of those 7-day pill organizers. Carrying prescription meds in containers other than the ones they were dispensed in is illegal in multiple US states. Georgia and Maine come to mind. You can be busted for illegal possession of your own prescription drugs. Absolutely stupid. So you're telling me you could carry 10 times the amount that's in your organizer, and it'd be fine as long as it's in the original container? Yeah, as long as it has the original labeling in your name. You can totally carry ridiculous amounts of drugs. The workaround on the pill case example from above while traveling is to also carry the bottles that the pills came from. Lived with my grandparents for a long time. My uncle, the police officer, told them to carry the bottles with them in case they got pulled over. Riding my bike without a helmet. Yeah, it's the law in Queensland, Australia. So is driving without a seatbelt. I think it's law everywhere in Australia. Some places it's also illegal to ride on the footpath if you're over 16 too. I had a 3-month internship this summer, and it wasn't until the last week that I realized I had been going the wrong way on a one-way street the entire time I was working. For context, the job was on a college campus, during a summer, and a global pandemic, so there were no other cars on this road. Also, the street was really confusing, and the do not enter signs weren't until after I pulled into work, so I thought the 100 feet of road I was driving down wasn't part of the one-way. When I was a little kid, I used to draw and make cards for the neighbors I liked. Then I would put them in their mailboxes. That's illegal. Technically only the post office is allowed to put things in a mailbox. This one is the strangest to me. Like, I get it, but I also don't. I just googled it and apparently, mailboxes are federal property. My house doesn't have a mailbox. They just kinda leave it on the stoop. If I installed a mailbox in front of my house, all of a sudden that's government property? Apparently going to and from school alone as 8 years old. Where would that be illegal? Put my recycling in my neighbor's bin. My landlord hides mine for some reason. I asked him once and he said we didn't have any. I can see it in our backyard from my porch. Downloading music, I guess, and burning songs in a CD. Changing a light bulb. Yeah, a light bulb. Have to be a qualified electrician in my country. Joke of a place. Torrenting. Now that I know it's illegal, I have a VPN. Torrenting in itself is not illegal. It's the sharing of copyright protected stuff that is. This is so true. Linux is heavily distributed by P2P. Windows is as well. It's just common sense to increase speed and decrease bandwidth use. Well, that, and reduce Microsoft's internet bill. Nice try, FBI. Not today, CIA. Is that your best, boss? Ain't no way. NSA. Won't get me. KGB. Him not your guy. HSI. I bought a pocket knife in Scotland and walked around with it. I didn't realize it was illegal until a checkpoint on a bus where I was caught with it when I handed it to the guard lady, who began to scold me. She asked if I was willing to give it up. I asked what happened if I didn't. That grabbed the attention of a couple other officers and I quickly gave it up. They couldn't answer how it is a shop can sell a knife but I can't have one. When I asked what they do when they go camping, they responded, not bring a knife really. Online gambling. I actually knew it was illegal for US citizens, but you would be surprised how other online US citizens would argue that it was entirely legal. The only way I could get them to have a little doubt about the legality was to ask them why the big name US casinos weren't online, because everyone knows they'd want a piece of the action. US online gambling laws have changed in recent years. Screen recording music from YouTube. Slapping them into a video converter to get MP3s, then eating them into my drive, then downloading them to iTunes. Now that I repeat this out loud, it sounds very illegal. I was a little thief as a kid and I got insanely good at it too. Like I could steal candy, bags of beef jerky, drinks, and basically anything in a store without being caught. Mind you, I was like 8 and I didn't realize that it was wrong. My parents, man, they never taught me. I used to illegally download music a lot when I was little because it just never occurred to me that it counted as stealing. I remember I freaked out hard when I discovered it was illegal. Carrying a salmon suspiciously. Be gay. It's still illegal in my country. I used to go to a specific big box store and print photos at the photo kiosk, then leave with them without paying. I always assumed the kiosk would ask me to put a card in to pay for the pictures before it would print them. But it never did. Lo and behold, it would always print my photos without asking for payment. I just assumed then that maybe you can just print photos for free, which I thought was pretty cool at the time. I brought this up to my wife at some point years later when she said I definitely am supposed to take those to the register to pay for them. Well, I ended up with tons of free photos over the years because of this. It probably saved me a total of $20 worth of pictures. I downloaded a car once. I mean, you joke about it, but cars are getting some serious software today. If someone could hack a Tesla and give themselves the performance upgrades, they'd be avoiding thousands in upcharges. Actually, I think I read somewhere that totaled old Teslas are finding new life across the Pacific, where they are revamped and sold with second-hand parts and programming. If someone could hack a Tesla and give themselves the performance upgrade, someone already did. Trespassing. There used to be this awesome pasture behind my house that I'd spend hours roaming and exploring. Got to pet and hang out with the cows and horses back there, too. Thankfully never got in trouble, but I definitely wasn't supposed to be there. Very fond memories of it though. Only did this once as far as I know, but while hiking at a nearby state park, I collected a beautiful feather from the ground. When I got back to my car, I searched online to figure out what kind of bird it came from. It was a red-tailed hawk feather, which is illegal to possess unless you're indigenous, aka Native American. I am a Russian Jew, so not even a drop of indigenous blood. Thought maybe I'd give it to a friend who's 50% Tlingit, but now it's lost anyway. I used to think that to hunt deer, you had to use a spotlight just after dark, cause that's the way my dad and uncle hunted. Watching porn or watching anime on Kissenheim.